All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with our webinar for today. The title of our webinar for today is Edcite. This is part of our NOACA webinar series. Edcite is a little bit different than some of the other webinars that we've had in the past. You can log in with your Google account, but it's not directly related to Google per se, but it is very, very helpful in the educational area. My name is Christy Hughes. I'm going to be your host for this webinar. I also have Chris Malanga on with me. He's listed as part of the participants, but he has chat host after his name. So you can feel free to message either one of us if you're having any problems or if you have any questions. We'd be happy to help you. A little bit about myself. I am the host from NOACA. My name is Christy Hughes. I'm an educational technologist as well as a Google certified trainer. I've been with NOACA now for 13 years, and prior to that, I was an elementary school teacher. So I'm looking forward to sharing something. And then lastly, I have 3 kids at the bottom, Bridget, Clay, and Ashlyn, and I'm looking forward to sharing Edcite with all of you today. So the objective for today is really just to learn how Edcite can be used to prepare your students for online test taking. Now, some of your districts have already done some online test taking, some of you may not. Just kind of depends on what your experience is, but Edcite is a great tool to use in and outside of the classroom to prepare your students. And we're going to look at some of the features of Edcite that you can use for your students. Of course, it's all online and it's all free, so you can do it, during the school day, or you can go ahead and do it as homework, or take them to the lab or use Chromebooks or whatever you prefer. But we're going to look at a lot of those features in this webinar. So the resources for today, the Edcite website is just edcite.com. The Edcite manual, that is a manual that's a shortened link to the manual. I actually did not create that manual. That is a manual that Edcite created. So I can't remember how many pages it is, but it is, pretty lengthy, and it does go through all the features of Edcite. Edcite is actually really good about providing materials for resources. So if you go out to just edcite.com, you can get a lot of instructional materials and so forth to kind of support using Edcite in the classroom. All right, before we kind of move into Edcite, just kind of as a reminder, our training.noaca.org, which is probably where you went to sign up for this webinar, but that is where we house all of our materials for NOACA. The last screen that I showed you, that resources manual for Edcite, once again, that was Edcite's material, but we are slowly trying to develop some things that are branded, or from NOACA, that will be out on training.noaca.org. Just as another quick thing, our Tech Tuesday tips, the shortened URL is down at the bottom. If you're not part of our Tech Tuesday tips, I would encourage you to do that. Just once a week on Tuesdays, we send out an email, and it's not very long. Just has a couple screenshots and a couple paragraphs about how to do some kind of tech tip or trick. Sometimes Google related, sometimes not. And if that's something that you feel might be good for you, feel free to sign up for that. That is completely free as well. All right, and then one of the last things here before we kind of hop right into our Edcite is just kind of as a reminder, and you can see down at the bottom of the page there, these webinars are put on by our Northern Buckeye Educational Council, which is the NBEC, and then also NOACA. And then in the other corner is our GEG of Northwest Ohio. And if you're not familiar with the GEG, it stands for our Google Educators Group of Northwest Ohio. However, we travel all over the place. We're in lots of different areas, but our next stop, what we call our NOACA Roadshow, is going to be in Perrysburg on March 7th. So we would encourage you to attend or sign up. It is a free event. And what it's going to be is an all-day filled of sessions where you can attend or, like I said, present as well, to just kind of network and learn about different technology going on around the area. So there is a shortened link there. I will hop out of this just so I can show you the website really quick for our GEG of Northwest Ohio. It is, once again, March 7th, 8 to 2:30. It's it's at Perrysburg Sport Office. and then there's a map there. But then towards the bottom of the page, there's the registration as well as the call for presenters. So feel free, if that's something that you'd like to attend, feel free to go ahead and do that. And once again, totally free. We also will be providing more events come summer because that's the time that I think works for a lot of teachers. So keep us in mind as you're starting to plan your summer professional development, because we will have some events for summer too. All right, so I think we're ready to move on to Edcite. And so I have a screen here. This is from the Edcite page, Empowering Teachers and Engaging Students. So the topics that we're going to cover within Edcite, first and foremost, we're going to talk about how you can go ahead and sign in. And what I kind of started to mention towards the beginning of this webinar was that you can use your Google account to sign in. So if you just go to edcite.com, and there's a teacher sign in and a student sign in, and that's really important to recognize that if you are going to use this with your students, that they will obviously need to click on that student sign in, whereas you would go ahead and click on that teacher sign in. But either way, if your students have Google accounts, they can sign in with their Google account as a student. I will show you the student side towards the end of this webinar when we get to the grading part, but just know that it's free for teachers and for students, but you can sign in with your Google account. Of course, if you don't want to use your Google account, that's certainly fine also. You can make up your own username and password for Edcite. But that's the first thing that we'll talk about. We're going to talk about how you can create classes. We'll talk about how you can add students, questions, assignments, grading, reports, and then finally sharing with others. All right, so I'm going to hop out of this presentation here, and I'm going to go directly into Edcite so I can show you what that looks like. I'm just going to go ahead and move this screen over. And so we have our teacher side of Edcite right behind this. And so if I click on Edcite here, I am already signed in as myself. If you are not signed in, or if you're brand new to Edcite, you can, like I said, just go to edcite.com and go ahead and up at the top, you're going to see where it says teacher sign in or student sign in, and then you would just click on teacher, and you have the option to sign in with Google or just create your own username and password. I always recommend, if you are going to use your Google sign in, I always recommend getting into your Google account first, and then, having Drive open or having your account open. And then that way, when you click on sign in with Google, there's no extra step. It just automatically goes right in. But if you don't have that opened already, it'll still work. You can just go ahead and sign in with Google. Then you would just put your Google username and password in there. So same thing for students. I think it's sometimes easier if they're already signed in, especially with the Chromebooks. They're already signed into Google, then they can just go to Edcite, sign in as a student, and then there's nothing additional that they have to fill out. It'll just automatically go right in. So first and foremost, when we're on our Edcite page, I have a lot of assignments out here. And of course, if you haven't ever used Edcite, you won't have this here. But either way, you're going to have all of these tabs up at the top. And so I have Edcite, I have home, classes, assignments, questions, and then social. So I'm going to just hop over to classes, because that's what we're going to start with, is creating your class. And so you have My Students, Create Class, Create Student, and Import Classes. One of the neat things about if you are using some other sort of product, you can import classes. So, and if you are using Google Classroom specifically, you can import classes and students from Google Classroom. So that's a big time saver, especially if you already have everybody in Google Classroom. If you don't, no big deal. You can go ahead and create a class, and you can add students by a class code. So if you are using Google Classroom, or if you've heard of Google Classroom, you know that with Google Classroom, you can invite students by code, and Edcite is going to be the same exact way. So let me just go ahead and click on Create Class, and I'll show you how this works. I can go ahead and name it. I'll name it, I'll just say Webinar Class. And notice how it automatically gives me that class code. So this would be the class code that I would give the students to sign in. Now, once again, once they sign in with their Google account or whatever username and password that they, use, it will prompt them to join a class and then enter that class code. So that would be the class code. Here's where you can turn the enrollment on and off. Again, if you're familiar with Google Classroom or other, products that kind of act the same way, you have the ability to turn the enrollment on and off. It's on by default, of course. but you can turn it off. You also can give your students any notes that you might want to give them as soon as they join the class. But I'm just going to click on Add Class, and then I will notice that I will get my class will pop up. It says Creating Webinar Class, and then it will go ahead and pop up. Of course, there's no students in this webinar class because I haven't shared it with anybody yet. I do have other classes over here that I'm going to show you where I do have, like, my sample class has 10 students in it, so that's the class that I'm going to show you today. But just know that when you're first starting, this is what it's going to do. Here's that class code, so that's what you can give to students. Now, I also could add a student, and I can go through and add, excuse me, each one individually. Depending on the amount of students that you have in your class, it might just be easier to use that class code, but you certainly can add them, you know, on your own if you wanted to do that too. Excuse me, other things over here, we talked about importing classes, creating students, so you can go ahead and create students and put them into your class, or create class like we just did. If I click on My Students up at the top, I will see a long list of all of my students. Now again, I just have 10 students, and I don't have any students in my sample class 2 and any students in my webinar class. But let's say I had 10 students in each class. Let's say I had 30 students altogether. This would show all of 30 of my students. So this is kind of just like a giant list of everybody. So if I just wanted to see the people in sample class, the first sample class, then I would click on that. If I just wanted to see sample class 2 or webinar class, that's kind of where I can differentiate between which class I want open. So again, by default, though, it's going to say all students. All right, so that's my classes tab. Now, I'm actually going to hop over assignments, and I'm going to go to questions. And I'll just kind of preface with the fact of if you're using, you know, Google Classroom, or if you're using something else that might be a little bit similar to Edcite, one of the main differences between Edcite versus some of the other products or apps out there is that Edcite, again, going back to our objective for this webinar, is that it really tailors more to that online test taking. So some of the questions that are available, some of the questions that you can create, some of the assignments that are available, some of the assignments that you can create are more or less that drag and drop. They're more or less like, I want you to read a passage and then write a response. I want you to, you know, move the items in the correct order. So they're gonna mimic more of those test questions that the students are going to see when they take an online test. So that's why Edcite and Edulastic is another one that are becoming really popular because they're mimicking a lot of those test questions for preparation to take the real test. So we're going to take a look at that, and we're going to take a look at how you can create those for your own classroom. So what I'll talk about here is, again, the difference between your assignments versus questions is you can have questions and you can have assignments. And what it does is you can see right here, it says My Questions and then Question Library. And over here it says My Assignments and Assignment Library. So what you're probably noticing at this point is that you can have your own, like your own assignments or your own questions, but there's also a library of questions that you can choose from. And same thing for assignments. There's also a library of assignments that you can choose from. So you certainly can create things from scratch, but you don't have to. And that's the really nice part, is that you can take a question or an assignment and tweak it and then make it however you want to make it and then assign it to your class. So let's take a look. I'm going to hop over to questions first. So I have my questions, which would be, I'm going to go ahead and click on this. I have just a couple questions in here. So these are all the ones that I might have created from scratch, or I might have grabbed from the question library and tweaked a little bit. You can also see where I can tag it with some different items, and we're going to talk about standards a little bit more as well, because that's also in Edcite. But that's just one thing. Now, under the questions again, here's my question library. So if I click on question library, this is where it really gets awesome, because there's so many different questions that are already in here that you can use. And there's a couple different ways that you can search for them, because by default, look at that crazy number right there. There's a ton of questions. So if I was an English teacher and I taught 6th grade and I'm just trying to search, it might be kind of hard to find exactly what I want. So we're able to kind of search more specifically. I can type in a keyword to search if I want to search for a specific question. I can pull this menu down where it says grade, and I can tell it, maybe I only want 6th grade. Well, I'll keep it as middle school for right now, but I certainly can tailor it to however I want it. And also, here's my subject. So down here for subject, again, by default, it's going to have all there. Maybe I just want to search for ELA. But notice how there's lots of different subjects here. So not just your main subjects. There's a ton of different subjects. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Apply. So now I'm down to a smaller number, still a big number, but a little bit smaller. So again, I can use my keyword search there if I wanted to, or I can just kind of scroll back and forth. Now, another thing that I'll mention is right here where it says Sort Order. It sorts by default by how many likes the questions get. So if you can kind of think about, if you like something on Twitter, Facebook, or whatever, kind of the same thing. This is where it says all that information, so you can see how many times that question's been viewed and how many times it's been liked, and maybe this one even has a comment there. So if you really want to read through that, you certainly can do that, or you could just kind of click around and see what you like. But if you want to sort by something different, you can do that too. So this is just your menu. So I can sort by views, I can sort by the date modified, the topic, the name, the creator. Maybe I use Edcite a lot and I found a certain teacher or a certain person that has posted a lot of great stuff. So maybe I just want to sort by creator because they teach the same thing as me or, whatnot. So I can do that too. But keep in mind, this is kind of how you search. The other thing that I'll mention for searching is by default, it just says that word search. We notice right here, here's another way to search. And so if I click on this kind of breaks it up in a different way. So I'll click on English Language Arts, and then I'll stick with my same topic of 6th grade ELA. And I'll go down and I'm just going to click on this first one here just to make it quick. But notice how I get another way to search. Again, I'm going to make my window a little bit smaller here so I get my search bar. But notice how I get another search, and this one actually is a little bit smaller, actually a lot smaller. So I just have 329. So it's going through and it's showing me all these questions. So again, that's kind of like the first step, is you kind of just want to get your, feel around for the things that are already out there, because, we all like to create great stuff, but if something's already created, we certainly don't want to have to reinvent the wheel if it's already out there. So just kind of finding your way to search and finding things that you like. Now, let's just say poetry 7th grade. I'm going to go ahead and click on this. So I get to view this question. Now, again, this is just one question. Sometimes, because on the real test, there may be different parts to the question. So you could have like a part A and a part B. So it just kind of depends on what question you click on and how it's really, labeled and so forth. Most of the questions already have the answers in there, so that's always something that is a bonus, that you can just check the answer, and then that's where Edcite will automatically grade the assignment for you. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go back to my first screen. And I also want to talk about, so we looked at it, we just viewed it. Under Actions, here's where I get the ability to do lots of different things. So here's this question, and for the sake of time, again, let's pretend that we just looked through it. I can view it, I can invite people, or I can copy it. And here's the difference. View it, we already viewed it. We clicked on it and we looked at it. Invite, if I wanted to invite somebody else, like maybe one of my other 6th grade teachers that we wanted to kind of collaborate on it, I could do that. Or copy. And if you're thinking like, okay, this is really neat, Christy, but how do I get these questions so that I can change them and put them in my own question bank? And this is how you do it. This right here is copy. So if I click on copy, this will automatically copy that question into my own question bank, and then I can go ahead and change it. Now, a couple things before we go ahead and do that. When I said copy, it brought up this edit question. Now, it says name, mother to son, question 1, so it pulled the same exact name. I certainly can go ahead and change that if I want to. But here's your magic button right here, save. So notice how, again, all the answers are labeled correct or incorrect or whatever. You can go ahead and change all of that. As I'm hovering over these, I get this little pencil that I can go ahead and edit it, or if I want to delete the choice, I can go ahead and do that too. You also notice that there's a pencil over here. So you're seeing just a lot of text boxes kind of like all put together. So if I wanted to bring this up and edit it, I can do that too. So it's really slick as far as you can take something and keep what you want and then change what you want. But again, that magic button here is save, because when I click on it to copy it, it's kind of like a two-step process. When I click on copy the question, it moves to this edit question, and now I need to click on save. So when I click on save, I can just say save. I can create another question if I want to. I can go back to my questions, or I can go back to my home page. So any one of these choices. I'm just going to go back to my questions. Actually, I'll click on that. Okay, so when I click here, we'll go view and answer question. All right, so here it is again, and here's my edit question, and I'll go back to my home page. Now, when I go back to my home page, again, I'll just click on, this is my student view. And I like this because now it's showing me how the student views that question. So if I wanted to see, like, I'm going to show you the actual student view in a little bit, but it's really neat how I can kind of see that without really logging in as a student. But let me go back here again. Let me go back to questions, and I'll just go back to question library. A couple other things I want to mention before we move on to the next thing. So if I would check this box, we talked about view, invite, copy, and let me get out of that for a second. I also could, when I was under view, I also had the ability to copy question. So there's a couple different ways that I can go ahead and copy that question. Again, copying that question would put it in your own questions library, which is going to be under questions and then my questions right here. All right, so we talked about question library a little bit, and this is just kind of something you're going to have to get used to as far as searching. You may have a lot of luck searching by keywords, grade level, subject, Common Core, so forth. Notice how the standards are already listed under each one, and so that would be something too. If you wanted to search by standard, you can do that also, but just kind of finding different things that are already out there. But let's say that you told me, hey, Christy, this is really neat, but I really do want to create my own questions. I don't want to use something that's already out there. So if I go to questions and I click on create question, this will bring me to a blank page. And now here's where I think you have so many different options, because it doesn't just bring you to a blank page. It actually brings you to a whole area, like a gallery almost, where you can kind of pick and choose what type of question that you want. So again, with the objective of this being to prepare students for that online test taking, notice how we have different categories up at the top. We also have, so here's our test alignment, we also have student action. So now I can even select a different type of category, math, written response, games, anything like that. If I want to just kind of focus on subjects, I can do that too. We have ELA, science, social studies, language, art, full listing, and then you can even tag some of them as your favorites if you wanted to. And then that way when you go and you create your own question, you can have a favorite type of question where you just kind of add it as you go. I'm going to go back to this test alignment though and just kind of show you what this looks like. So the park types, there's actually a ton of different ones in there. And as I'm just going through these, I'm just going to hover over this and go through drag and drop, essay, response, extended answer. Notice how also over here it's giving me a little preview of what that type of question looks like. So if I click on my arrow to go back and forth, notice how over here it's going down and over here it's going to the next one. So to me, this is extremely helpful because I'm not wasting any time clicking on a type of question, getting inside of it, and then saying, oh no, that's not what I want. Whereas now I'm actually able to see the preview of the question and go through it and decide like, oh yeah, that's exactly the type of question that my students need to focus on, and we're going to go ahead and do that type of question. So I can continue to do this, as well as change the category and, again, continue to do this based on whatever type or filter that I want to go ahead and do. So it's always going to give me that nice preview. I'm going to go ahead and we'll keep it on park there. Let me just go down a little bit. I'm going to just to be real simple, I'm just going to click on this multiple choice park ELA. So when I click on that, it's going to give me, I'll scroll down just a little bit so you can see my screen. Again, it's going to give me that type of question so I can go ahead and see it. And over here, I get the option to create the question. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Create Question. Now again, this is where I'm doing it from scratch. This is not something that I found in the library. This is something that I'm doing from scratch. So the first thing that you need to do all the time is go ahead and give it a name. And I'll say at this point that, you know, if you're working with Google, Google automatically saves everything that you do. Edcite does not. So you want to make sure, and I'm just going to name this sample question. We'll type in sample question. At this point, you want to save as you go because it does not automatically save for you. I get all these options up here. So here's my solution, here's my rubric. I can always attach a rubric, and here are my tools. So down here where it says Edit Tab 1, I can just type in something simple here, but what I really like to do at this point is because you may want to be pretty involved with your passage or whatever you want to put inside that box. So at this point, it's helpful to go ahead and click on that Open Full Editor. And there's lots of different cool things in this editor. Notice how, of course, at this point, I can bold stuff, I can underline it, I can center it, I can align it, I can change my font, I can change, you know, if I want to do the background color. But also check this out where I can insert images, I can insert sounds, and I can insert video. So if your students need to watch a video and then answer questions about it, you can do it in this type of format. If your students need to look at a diagram and then answer questions about it, you can do it in this type of format. It doesn't always just have to be read and then respond, read and respond. I mean, of course it could be, but it can be anything you want. So I'm just going to click on image just to kind of show you what's out there. And there are a ton of images that are already loaded in. Look how many, almost 4,000 shared images. Now, of course, I can add my own image. I don't have to just pick one of the 4,000 images that are there. I can add my own. But for the sake of time, like if I wanted to just search for something, I'm just going to type in water cycle here. And again, there's some pictures, images that are already out there. So I'll just go ahead and click on this one. I'm going to say select image, and it pops itself right inside that question. Now, I can go ahead, I can even make it smaller if I want to. So truly, this really is just like a text editor. So I can put my text over here. I can put my text down here if I want to. I can hit return. I can go ahead and customize this question however I want to. So I'll just put text here. I'll just put question. And I'm going to say OK. But just know that if you want to change anything, there's that pencil there. Now, because Edcite automatically grades for you, it is going to prompt you, and it keeps coming up with this, no answer has been said. So it's reminding me about that. So right here, these are, again, just little text boxes. You can type in at that point. I always like to click on this pencil because, again, it brings me to that text editor where if I, you know, for the little kids, maybe I want to put a picture as an answer choice, or maybe I want to put a link as an answer choice, or a sound file as an answer choice. You can do whatever you want to at this point. Change the formats. You can insert a table. You can do lots of cool things. So we'll just put answer 1, and we'll just say OK at that point. But you get the idea where I can go ahead and you know, change all of these different answer choices. Now, this is something that is a little bit different, so I want to make sure I mention this because, once again, you do need to select that correct answer. When I'm hovering over these answers, you notice that I get 3 icons, and I get the pencil, which we talked about. That's how you edit. I get this X and then this X. So this X is delete this choice. So if I don't want something in B or D, for that matter, I can delete it and then D goes away. Well, this red X actually means if I check it, that actually changes it to the check mark, and then that's going to indicate that this is the correct answer. So that's a little bit different, so I just wanted to make sure that we talked about that because, again, you do have to mark the correct answer, and that's how you do it. So if you click on this, then that's going to select that that's the correct answer, and then same thing for this. Of course, you can have, you know, multiple correct answers. Just kind of depends on what type of question that you have and how you want your students to respond. At this point, I'll just kind of mention, too, here's your layout. So these are all things that you can change. If I want to move this around, I can do that. If I want to add other things, I can do that, add a choice. Of course, if I want to delete the whole response, I can do that, too. Now, here's your choice settings. We're going to talk about this a little bit more when we get into the assignment part, but you do get some choice settings. Once again, if you want the multi-select, where you want them to like choose all the answers that are correct, or if you just want them to have the single answer that's correct, you can change all of that. And I always tell people, especially with Google, anytime you see a little gear, that usually indicates that that's some kind of settings menu. So it's always good to kind of click on it and see what you can do at that point. Now, a couple of the things up here before we go ahead and click on save, although we can at that point, or at this point, is here's your rubric. So if I wanted to attach some kind of rubric, now again, this is just for this question, so it probably doesn't make too much sense just with this question, but know that we can attach rubrics for assignments and all kinds of stuff, and there's a whole rubric library that's already loaded in. Or you can apply your own rubric, create your new rubric, and so forth. So there's lots of things that are already in here that you don't need to create on your own. Also, this tools, when I clicked on tools, I can enable the protractor, enable the ruler. Probably that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for my water cycle question, but you get the idea. If you're a math teacher, you may want to enable some of those tools because that's something that the students might see on the test and you want them to be comfortable with it. So let's go ahead and click on save, and I'm going to go back to my home page. Now, I added the question, so now if I went to my questions, it should be listed there, but here's where, again, I went and, I started where that whole process. I do have a whole passages library, videos library, images, and audio, and that's what I really think is neat, is that there's so much already there that you don't have to create everything on your own if you didn't want to. So we're going to go ahead and look at some of my questions. So there's my question down there. All right, so here's the next part that we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk about assignments. So up here, well, and I'll just mention one thing on questions before we go ahead and move to assignments, is when I click on questions, so it always, right here's my drop down where I can say my questions, question library, or create question, but I also have the same options right here. So here's my questions, and shared questions is that question library. That's the same thing. So when you share a question, it's going to go out to the whole Edcite community where anybody can access it. Now, when you create your own new question, by default, it's not going to be shared. If you do want to share it, you can go ahead and share it. But, that's certainly not something you have to do, especially right at the beginning. So you don't have to worry about that it's going to be shared with the world. You can go ahead, you would control that as far as like who you want to see it and so forth. Under the actions, so I'm still in the questions, my questions library. I'm still over here. Under the actions, this is where we kind of saw some of those things when we were in the questions library where I can view, edit, share, invite, or copy. So again, if I click on share, that's going to share it with the whole Edcite community, whereas by default, it's just going to be mine. I'm the only one that's going to see it. Copy, again, that would copy another copy since I already have it. And invite, I can invite, somebody else to collaborate with me. I do want to mention the last part about the questions library, and then we will move to assignments, is that within the questions library, you can create folders. And I think this is huge because as you start to add more and more questions, you're going to get a lot, and you need to be able to kind of manage where all of those are. So I work with a lot of different grade levels, so I created an elementary, middle school, and high school folder, but you certainly can create whatever type of folder that you want, and you can name it whatever you want to. So if I click on my plus sign, that will allow me to create, I'll stick with my same theme here, and click on sample or type in sample. And here it is, and I don't have any questions in there, but now any new question that I create, I can stick in that folder to kind of help me manage everything within Edcite. So here's my pencil if I wanted to edit the folder, or I can go ahead and do some different things there too. All right, so I'm going to click on all there so I can see all of my questions. And now the next part I'm going to go ahead and talk about are the assignments. And kind of following along those same lines as questions, again, we prefaced with this at the beginning, was that we have my assignments, which are just going to be that are private to you, assignments that are private to you. You have your assignment library, and then you're able to create your own assignment. So pretty much the same thing as questions, only these are assignments. Of course, the assignment library is always somewhere where I look to start first because they're ones that are already created. So I have my assignments, and then I have shared assignments. And if you notice the theme, this is the same thing that we saw in questions, where it said select view, search, Common Core. I could search down here. Here's my grade level. Here's my subject, and here's my advanced search. Now remember, for my advanced search, I don't remember if I mentioned this or not in the question part, but if there was like a creator or a topic or a tag or some kind of code or owner, that's going to allow me to really do an advanced search, just like you would in Google, to go ahead and find something specific rather than kind of trying to filter through all of these different assignments. But I'm just going to click on search again, or let me click on my assignments. And then here's shared assignments once again. If I want to go ahead and search by keyword, here's my keyword, grade level, subject, and I also get the same ability as questions to drop down the sort order and go to views, modify date, topic, name, creator, and so forth. I kind of really like looking through these, how many views that they've had, how many likes that they've had, and then of course the standards that they meet, and the grade level and the tags and so forth. So this is all really helpful information for me. So if I don't want to search by keyword or by grade level or whatever, I can just kind of scroll through up and down and find some things that I like. Now, you have some different icons here that are, of course, different than what we saw in the questions. One is the student view, and the other one is the assign. So let's take a look at the student view first. So I'm just going to click on this first question. And I'm just viewing it as a student. So if a student would start the assignment, this is what they would see. They would go through. There's multiple questions in this one. There is a rubric already attached. And I can just kind of go through. This just talks a little bit about they have to enter their answer in there. And I'm going to go to the next question. And some of these questions may be a little bit different. Like it looks like, there's 9 questions or something. So there's a ton of different ways. So it's just a whole little mini test. So here's another type of question in multiple choice. So you get the idea, where I can go ahead and just kind of scroll through and see what it looks like. Now I'm going to go back here though, and I have that other word called assign. So I'm going to pause at that point and hop over to this actions. And so hopefully you're seeing the similarity here between assignments and questions, because we also have this actions and questions. And so we get the make it yours, print, answer key, and invite. So invite would be the same thing as inviting one of your co-teachers to go ahead and help you, put some answers in or questions or whatever. Your answer key, of course, if this is an already created assignment, then the answer key is probably already in there. You can print it. And make it yours is your copy button. So if I go through this assignment, I can look at it from the teacher view, or I can look at it from the student view. And let's say that I really like it, I can make it mine. If I click on make it yours, it goes into my own, or it's starting to go into my own assignment. I should say my assignment library, not the public assignment library. And again, it's going to bring me to that create assignment or edit assignment page. So I can go ahead and give it a name. Of course, it's always going to default to the name that's in there, but I'm just going to call it webinar just so I can tell it apart from all my other questions. You, of course, will name it something different. I can give it a due date. I don't have to do this yet because what I probably would like to do at this point is go through the whole thing and decide, like, do I want this question? Do I not? This red X here in the corner will allow me to just delete that question. So if I don't like it, I could just click the X and it's gone. This pencil here will allow me to edit that question. So if I want to change anything in it, if I want to select a different passage, if I want to, whatever I want to do at this point, I want to change the layout, I can do whatever I want to. That edit will allow me to go ahead and do that. So I probably want to take some time and look through this question and decide, if it's good as it is or if I want to change it. A couple things that you can do up here, and one of the things you're probably noticing is that it's not allowing me to assign it. Now, I probably didn't save it yet, so that would be my first step, would be to save it. But look at this little ribbon here. It says saved as draft, and so it's not allowing me to assign it. When it's saved as a draft, which is the default, which is what I would recommend that you do, the draft indicates that you're still in edit mode and that you want to change it. You want to delete something, you want to add it, whatnot. So you cannot assign it until you call it active. So once you change it to active, notice how immediately that assign button is now lit up. Now I can go ahead and assign it. Now you may also have noticed that down here underneath active, it came up with this link that says quick assign. So the difference between quick assign, this link, versus assign is if I click on assign, that's going to stay within Edcite. I'm going to be able to assign it to my class, and everybody that's inside my class in Edcite with that class code and whatever will be able to take it, and I'll be able to record their results, and they'll be able to see a nice report, and I'll be able to see a nice report and all this really neat stuff. If you do quick assign, I can actually just highlight this website and put it in a new window, and I can use it with students that are not even part of my class in Edcite. So basically, if they don't even have an Edcite account, they can answer this question or this group of questions, or this assignment really, without even having an account. Now the reason why it says quick assign is because of that. I can give them the link, they click on it, they answer the question, and then they're done. So while that's maybe convenient, it doesn't allow any really feedback for the kids, because once they answer the questions or group of questions or assignment, they click submit and they're done. They don't see their answers, or they don't see the reports, they don't see anything. You do, because it's kind of loaded into your class, but it's harder to track them. So it's kind of, whatever would work best for you. If you want to really track your kids and allow them to have the reports and allow them to have feedback and all that stuff, I would probably just go ahead and click on this word assign. But know that you can use each one. And again, if you're trying this on your own and you're not seeing this assign word, remember that you have to make that draft or that assignment be active, and then it will go ahead and pop up. So let's just go ahead and click on assign. And at this point, I can send it to whatever class I want to. So by default, it's telling me that it's going to send it to all of my classes. I can go ahead and do that if I want to, or I can just send it to my first class or my webinar class, or whatever. So I'm just going to click on sample class. I'll click name to check everybody. So they're all going to go ahead and go there, send to selected students. Okay, so all of my 10 students have now received this assignment. Now, either before or after, probably before, I want to talk to you about some of these things down here. Now, of course, the answer key, that was something that you would have to do before you give them the assignment so that, Edcite will automatically grade it. I could print it. We're going to talk about reports in a little bit, and of course, we're going to grade it. But one of the things I really want to mention, again, here's that gear icon. Anytime you see that gear icon, this allows for extra things. Here's your settings. So that's okay that I already assigned it, but I want to make sure I visit these settings because I want to show you all the neat things in here. So it defaults to this basic setting. So this is just for this assignment. So each assignment can be totally different as far as settings go. So right here it says basic settings. Disable quick assign, so that link that I just showed you, if you're thinking to yourself, Christy, I would never use that, you can go ahead and disable that link and then don't worry about it. You can mark it as a common assessment. Here's your reports where you can hide answer details in reports. And we're going to talk about the reports once we get this graded, because there's a lot of information inside the reports. And if you're not really too sure how much information you want to give your students right away, like maybe you don't want to give them answer details if you're worried about them sharing with other people, you can check that box. If you don't want the scores displayed, there's lots of boxes in here that you can check and uncheck. A couple important ones in here, control the retakes. So by default, this says that it's going to allow assignment retakes. So if you don't like that, you can go in and disallow or not allow assignment retake. So once again, within these settings, this is what I think is really important here. So I was mentioning about this access control, and the fact that you can go ahead and make your assignments have a certain start date or time and an end date and time. So if that's something that you would find helpful, then it would kind of close out at a certain time and the students wouldn't be able to answer it anymore. So that's really helpful. Student view, again, allow answer checks after each question. This is a big one. So if they answer a question, are you going to allow them to have answer checks after each question? Are you going to disable the question reset? Are you going to disable math notations and math tools? So, once again, everything in the settings part right here is something that you can kind of turn on and off. A couple of things up at the top, like student tools. If you're doing math, if you're doing something where they need tools, this is awesome. So I can turn on a calculator, I can turn on a basic one, a scientific one, a graphing one, I can do text-to-speech, I can do the periodic table, I can do a reference sheet, I can do lots of different things just by kind of checking boxes on and off. And again, these are all within the settings. So I can go ahead and check or uncheck these, and then click on Save Changes, and that will apply to that assignment. All right, so I already assigned this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull over my student view window, and you guys can see what that looks like. I have a student over here. Let me pull him up. I'm going to refresh his page so you can see his assignments. And so this is Fred. Fred Flintstone's coming over. He's one of my students. And let me pull his window over. So here he comes. And here's his assignment. So his is going to look a whole lot different than the teacher view. So it says, Welcome, Fred. It has a little notification of how many things he has going on. Here's his classes. So here's where that Join Class option was. So that's where I could type in that class code if I gave him that class code where he can go ahead and join a class. Here's my assignments. So it doesn't really allow me to have, it's pretty simple. It just pretty much gives me my assignments, my classes, my help, my home, which is great for kids. So here's my assignments, and here's all the assignments that Fred has. Fred has a lot. He's my test student here. So here's the first one where it says webinar, Christy Hughes, and then unopened, and then the date. So he's going to go ahead and open it. And it's going to look exactly how it looked on the teacher's side, and he's going to go ahead and complete this assignment. So he's going to go through, he can flag any questions that maybe he needs to return to. He can look at that rubric, he can take notes, and some of these settings, again, pulled from what I allowed him to do from before. So he's going to go ahead and go through this, and he can go through the whole thing. Now, I'm kind of running out of time here, so I'm not really going to fill this out, but I'll just click on a couple answers just so you can see it. Let me go to the next page. And at this point, I'm just going to say review, save, and submit. But you get the idea how he would just go through this and, again, flag anything that he might need help with or he might need to go back to or take notes and whatnot. I'm just going to go ahead and click on review, save, and submit. And so I love how it pulls up with this page that says, hey, are you sure? You have 6 questions unanswered. You have 3 choices. Do you want to review your answers? Do you want to save and pause, or do you want to go ahead and submit? So again, for the sake of time, we're just gonna, it's not gonna allow me to do it. All right, that's okay. So I'll just go ahead and go back to another assignment that I already have for Fred. So here's this grade 3 fable that I had before earlier today, and I can reopen it if I want to, or I can get the report. And this is the part that I really wanted to show you, is the report. Now, Fred did this assignment earlier, and he didn't really do a good job because the same thing, he kind of skipped around and didn't answer everything. But I want to show you what this report looks like. So this is the student view. So this will show the current score. Again, he did really, really bad. But he gets this nice report. And so it shows them how much time he spent, it shows them the date, it showed them how many times he took it, what his score was, what the total was. And this is one of those settings where if the teacher allowed Fred or the students to see the questions and the answers, he or she, the student, would be allowed to see that after they submitted. So again, if you're like, I don't want anybody to see anything, you can go back and change that under settings. But that's what the student would see under those reports. Now, I'm going to go back and pull over my teacher view again, and I'm going to show you what the teacher sees as far as the reports go, because obviously it's way different because there's lots of kids in the class rather than just one student. So under assignments here, I'm going to go to my assignments, and I can go ahead and see them, and I can even go to classes, however you want to start there. So I'll go to, let's go to my students right here, and I'll look up my class. So here's my class, sample class 10, and I can go ahead and see this. Now, if I wanted to click on Fred by himself, I can go ahead and do that, or once again, I can just click on assignments. So let me go back to assignments here. I'll show you this one. And let me find, see if I can remember which one it was. Here it was. And you also saw, let me go back to this screen really quick. You also saw how 1 person took it and 10 people did not. So I can see just, looking at all of my assignments from this home screen, I can see how many students took it and how many didn't. So here are my actions. And I can view it, I can edit, assign, and grade, or I can report. So let's talk about the grade first, and then we'll move to the report. So here's the grade. Again, I told you that Edcite automatically grades it for you. However, if there's a part of the question that you need to override, specifically like a written response or something like that, you can go ahead and do that. So right here it says to be graded, 0.33, so I can go ahead and open that up, show question response, and I can go ahead and say, okay, well, I'm going to give him some extra points here, or he, was absent that day, or whatever. So I can go ahead and override that answer. The other thing I want to mention too is right here where it says report, I can go ahead and run a report. Now, I think the report part is really neat. I probably don't have a lot of information in here just because only one of my students took it, but you get the idea. And by default, it's going to aggregate the data, but I can run the report by standard, or I can run the report by questions, and also by percentage and by points. So this is going to take my whole class, so these are all of my 10 students, based on this one assignment. Fred just took this one time, but you see this is kind of grayed out. It says the first time that they took it, or if I drop this down, this may be the second time they took it, or an average of the 2 times that they took it. And then I can regenerate the report. So that's really nice. Down here, it's going to tell me the min, the max, the standard deviation, the average, and then I can also export these grades as a CSV file. So if you want to move all of these grades to a gradebook, PowerSchool, progress book, whatever you might use, if you're able to move them in as a CSV file, you can go ahead and do that, because this will export all this assignment as a CSV file. So that's really helpful. So let me go back and get out of my reports here just for a second. So once again, for my grading, I can go ahead and do that, and everything is kind of saved within Edcite. So all of that is there. Now, if I was in this grading part, notice how I can grade by student and also grade by question. So I like that you get that option, because sometimes, depending on the assignment, one works better than the other. So I can grade by student, meaning that I'm going to go through each student, whole assignment, and give them a grade, or I can say, you know what, I only want to look at question 1 for the whole class. And so it will pull up just question 1 for every single student, and then I can go ahead and grade it. And that may give me a better idea of, okay, everybody got it, or no, they didn't get it. I need to do some reteaching. So that's really nice. You saw me from before that, you saw from before that I was able to click on the report from this screen. I'm also able to click on the report from my grading screen. So I get this summary report right here, and I can go ahead and click on summary report, and it's going to bring me to that exact same report. So once again, I don't have a ton of data, but you get the idea where it's going to give me a nice graph there. I can even print this if I need to show it to any parents during conferences or an administrator or anything like that. So really, really cool things. All right, I am really running out of time. So I'm going to go ahead and bounce back over here, and let me wrap up with, let me present this here. Let me wrap up with my last page of this webinar. I know towards the end I went a little bit fast, but hopefully you got a really good idea of what Edcite can do, and I love that it's free. We have a lot of districts that are using it for just that test preparation, that they can go ahead and give their students questions and assignments, and allow them to go ahead and do that. They can take a grade, they cannot take a grade, but just allowing them to experiment or have experience with some of those tests or some of those questions that they're going to get on the real tests is a great thing. So I'm going to end with my last screen here. Of course, thank you for attending. There's that short link for our Google Educators group right there that does have our Perrysburg Roadshow on there. If you're interested in attending or presenting, we encourage you to do that. There's a link for the copy of this presentation. There's not a whole lot of information within this presentation, but the links to those resources are in this presentation. I will also bounce back to that page if that might be helpful for anybody. And of course, all of these webinars are recorded, so this will be out on our training.nowaka.org website fairly soon. So if you'd like to watch it again, you certainly can do that. There's our link for our tech tips, and then lastly, our CEU information. If you've attended one of our webinars before, you're probably familiar with this. If you're not familiar with CEUs, how we do it is we usually say about 24 hours, you're going to get an email in your inbox. So I like to just tell people when they get to school tomorrow morning, you should have an email in your inbox that has an evaluation link. Once you go ahead and fill out that evaluation link, you will be able to put your name in and so forth, and all the information that goes to your certificate, and then your certificate will be automatically emailed to you as an attachment. If you have any questions or problems, certainly let us know about that, but let me go back to that page in my presentation here. I'll go back to the resources page so you can go ahead and if you'd like to jot those down, you certainly can. If not, don't worry about it. Again, this will be out on our training website. But that manual there, we at NOACA did not create that. That is Edcite's material. And like I said, they do have a lot of neat things out on their website. So certainly go ahead and go check them out on their website. They have some videos out there too that are really helpful. But hopefully you've enjoyed this webinar. Hopefully you've learned some information about Edcite, and I've gotten some comments through the chat box. I certainly agree this is an awesome program for teachers and students to use in and outside of the classroom, and I mean, you can't beat it. It's free. So I'll stick around. I know Chris is going to stick around just for about 5 minutes or so. If you guys have any questions, comments, we'll be here. Otherwise, thank you for attending, and we hope to see you again.